Yes. So this is WSJ City. It's a brand new iPhone app that we have built to focus on a very core area of our audience, as the name suggests, the city, the square mile. Something pretty close to the Wall Street Journal's heart, but as you probably know, the Wall Street Journal, very good at long-form content, very good at investigative journalism, very trusted content, but very sort of tended towards the kind of long narrative style. And we have another very city-focused publication that's part of our group called Financial News, as well as other media in the stable, Dow Jones Newswires and The Times, which we thought, how about if we bring all these things together and find a new way of telling the stories that appear in these outlets, but sort of tell them all in the same way, do them in a way that works for a city-type audience. So highly mobile, high net worth, very, very busy audience that are frequently in a taxi or at a meeting and want to be made, kind of want the smart facts at their fingertips pretty quickly. So what we've done is this is a purely for mobile product. We don't just sort of rerun the content that's been in the other publications. We actually rework it for the mobile, we add data to it, we enrich it with graphics. If I just sort of show you top story here, we put through, look, so these are the sort of FTSE constituents that are coming out, how have they done through the year, what are the kind of just the very, very sort of snap facts that you need to know, and a data center here as well. Lots of people on the move, they want to know what the markets have done, so we give them kind of a quick way to do that. For us, it's something that we pull together very, very quickly, like literally in a matter of weeks, but based on technology that we'd already developed for another product we have called What's News, which is a kind of broader general news, using the same kind of storytelling technique. And it's something that we'll be doing more of at the Wall Street Journal, because we know that there are people who like to browse the newspaper, like to browse the website, like to read us on Twitter, but there are also the subset that just want to know the smart facts very quickly. So you'll see more of this as time goes on. It won't just be finance-based, we'll be doing it for other things, for tech, for all the kind of areas where we specialize. You can download it from the App Store. It's only on iPhone for now, but we are developing an Android version. It's becoming fully customizable in a few weeks, months down the line, fully shareable, etc. But please go check it out, have a look, let us know what you think, and if you have any ideas, send them our way. Thanks very much.
So I'm very, very excited to bring to the stage the founder and editor of BBC Trending, Mukul Devachand.
Don't clap till you've heard it. So I'm Mukul Devachand. I run BBC Trending, as Joanna said. For those of you who don't know it, it's a production unit within the BBC that actually makes stuff. So we basically make a lot of digital first stuff. We run a text blog on the BBC website. We make a lot of video, and we also make a radio program that goes on World Service Radio every week. We also run social media channels in Facebook, Twitter, and smaller ones in Instagram and YouTube. And all of that is basically output, and it's output about, I suppose our tagline is what's popular and why. But really what we're saying is social media matters, and we want to report on it, and there are things happening in social media that we believe it is important and useful for the BBC to be reporting on. And it's been going for 2 years now, and it's been reasonably popular. It's got good numbers in terms of the readership and the viewing of the videos and the podcasts. And we've learned a lot of lessons in those 2 years, some of which will be explored with other speakers today, and I want to talk to you about now in terms of things like analytics, how to use social media analytics to select stories, how to use social media analytics to investigate stories. But today I want to talk about editorial choices and editorial style and tone, voice and visual voice. We're the BBC. BBC Trending thinks we're cooler than lots of other parts, but we are basically the BBC. So what is the right way for the BBC as a very trusted public service journalistic organization to be in this very global social media space? And I will say that BBC Trending has a particularly global remit. It's part of the BBC that faces out to the world in terms of the world services where we have our radio show and where we're looking for a global audience. It has been a real learning curve for me, particularly that question of tone. And we haven't always got it right. Let's begin at the beginning of the story. This is one of our first videos. I was egotistical enough to present it myself, and it'll give you a flavour of what we were trying to go for, I think. Now the sound isn't working, obviously.
Is the sound plugged in?
I don't know. So this is me asking women in London to rate me out of 10. Started off quite well. And then we go through a whole story about an app in Brazil that is about people being rated, but they are women who are being rated, not men, and the big debate that has caused. And at the very end, I won't play it to you, someone rates me very badly. Okay, so that's a bit of fun, but I guess it's actually still quite traditional. It's a BBC reporter trying to do something funny, trying to be wacky in a kind of a fairly traditional report. We were also, I suppose, trying to find out what our editorial agenda should be in entering the social media reporting space. We knew the highfalutin stuff had sort of been in the pitch. So the kind of concept was, let's see social media differently. Let's not see it as a place just to get, just for social news gathering, finding contributors, finding people near where the bomb went off. And let's not only see it as a place where the BBC can get new audiences and promote stuff, but let's see it as a place that is big enough now that genuine political, social, and cultural change is happening there. Change that is worth reporting on. And when I pitched it, Exhibit A was pretty clear. It was the Arab Spring, which mainstream journalism hadn't really seen coming, but which had played out on social. Exhibit B was the reaction to the gang rape in Delhi 2 years ago, and the kind of social movement that had come off the back of that. But once you actually get into, they said yes, they commissioned it, and we started doing it. Once you actually start running it, you face big questions about what to cover in this sort of massive stuff that trends, and what to leave out as the BBC. Can you cover social media without covering One Direction a lot? Do you have to do cat stuff, like videos, quite a bit? Not just when they're Belgian sharing them to kind of criticize curfews or Islamic State, but all the time. So we settled on the following kind of concept: stories where at least sizable social media conversations are happening, and that they're doing something that feels at some level journalistically important, and also something that we haven't heard before. So they are quite surprising and interesting to the whole audience. And what we found, I think, was an incredibly rich territory. I was going to play you another video here, but I'm just not going to try that. But that was a video that was made a couple of months ago in August in Sweden. And it was about a young Syrian refugee there who had gone viral in Arabic, telling jokes about how hard it is to live in Sweden and how actually maybe you should think twice about coming. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing that he was saying. But it was a really interesting viral conversation in Arabic. We made the video in English, and it was a big hit. And it was obvious to see why people were sort of interested in that spike. So I guess we were finding and translating stuff that was beginning to get traction in social media and bringing it to a wider audience and trying to hit things and conversations that felt on the rise. Now this is in August, where at that point the refugees welcome hashtag had not started trending, but it was beginning to pick up steam. So we felt ahead of that curve, and we continued to do stories on that until the picture of Alan Kurdi, the young refugee who died, went very viral. This way of looking at for stories has brought us into some very rich territory. For example, Bring Back Our Girls, the Nigerian hashtag, which we spotted, I think, within a few hours of having of it starting and started reporting on it. And then, of course, Michelle Obama tweeted it, and it all became very big. One that I'm particularly proud of is our coverage of the Ya Me Cansé movement, I Am Tired movement in Mexico, which was the protest movement over the killing of 43 students at a teachers training college. And in a sense, millions of Mexicans were sending a signal to the wider world that things had gone too far in their country. And it was very big on social media, but not very big on the editorial agenda of several mainstream news organizations. So we, being in that space, were able to find it, cover it. We went to Mexico and broadcast an hour on the radio from there. We made digital video. And I felt like we were ahead, in a sense, of that issue. The Black Lives Matter movement from the United States, again, stuff where we noticed things, perhaps before they'd become, that was a big news story. There were several big news stories. But we managed to get into the nitty-gritty of the social movement, I think, by keeping an eye on social media. So subject matter, that's how you do it. But what about tone? Well, we are BBC journalists, and I would say that there were quite a few fails in terms of getting the right tone to cover social media. For example, how do you describe memes? I mean, you must all know what memes are, but not everybody in the BBC audience knows what memes are. So when you introduce them in text, here are a few clangers that I wrote. It's been a World Cup jam-packed with internet memes, humorous images, and catchphrases, often shared on social media. That does not sound cool when you're sort of trying to get that to be shared. This is about the Luis Suarez bike meme. The incident was like a gift from heaven to the world of internet memes. Playful images created by users, with takes on Jaws, Hannibal Lecter, and vampires among the favorites. We learned some lessons about what language to use, and I'd say we arrived at a much more informal tone than a lot of other BBC journalism. I think the most audible place for this is in our radio program, where we have multiple voices. It's quite casual. There's very little, I am the presenter and I will show you things. And there's much more a couple of guys talking and saying, hey, check this out, and actually reacting as human beings in a way that is serious, but also light. You can get a lot into that framework. We can do very serious stories using that. And we can also do Dear Fat People, the Nicole Arbour video that went viral, and try and find what's serious and interesting about that, but also covering it in a way that isn't po-faced. With memes, you can use memes as interesting starting points for stories. Like, you guys must have seen the skeptical third world kid meme, which is a small African child looking skeptical at an Indian lady. So we thought, well, everyone shared it, but who is the kid? So we managed to find at least the person who took the photo and where the kid was, and we're still hopeful of finding him. So you can get, and it's in Gulu in Uganda, so it's kind of quite interesting. You can get into, that's about the Lord's Resistance Army. That was a town where all of those things were going on. We have also failed sometimes in terms of subject matter. One of our most talented reporters, Anne-Marie Tomchak, will probably thank the fact that the videos aren't working, because I was going to play this kind of piece that we did about the argument between Jay-Z and Solange in the lift, if you remember that, which was, and as the BBC, even BBC Trending, it wasn't clear how to cover that. It was a kind of a celebrity thing, but it was also about domestic violence. Was it? Was that being too serious? So she ended up doing some sort of quite serious pieces to camera in a lift. And although the piece did very well in terms of the numbers, we just all felt this is probably a subject matter that we're not going to do well in. Our team, the Trending team, really are the character, not any individual presenter. In all of our media, whether it's the blog or the videos or radio, we kind of reveal a bit of ourselves. Sometimes literally, somebody who's in our audience here actually presented a program while pretty much naked. That was about the dad bod, which was a viral meme. But I think that the idea is that social media is peer-to-peer, so the old BBC tropes just don't really work as a reporting style. We have to be peer-to-peer. Another thing I'd say is in terms of how do you do social media reporting when it's on the fly, as a lot of it is? How do you remain original and not just look sort of like you're just recycling? So in terms of that, there have been things that I've been proud of, and I think it's about being original in your take. So, for example, the Muslim Lives Matter hashtag spiked some time ago, and that was about 3 Muslims who had been killed by a non-Muslim in an attack in the US. And it was taken as a kind of by many people as a kind of hang on, the media's not covering this, but they would cover it if a Muslim had done it. So we covered that very quickly. We were amongst the first to file on it, but we also found who had started it. And it turned out that that was a Washington, D.C. based lobbyist who had a particular take on the whole issue and hadn't really checked the facts of this killing and admitted that. So that was an interesting layer to that story, which it was quite an original way of, I think, was an original way of getting to it. And that's kind of, where we're at. So we're finding ways to cover social media for the BBC. We're experimenting in lots of new things as well. Some of our latest ones, we're trying to work with Panorama to do a digital panorama from Redcar, which is one of the towns where the steel plant is closing. And we're doing that over 50 days on Facebook. So we're producing stuff for Facebook every day. And the question is, can we do the work of a documentary or of a longer form program, but in this medium and in this way? We've done various touchcasts. We did one that I'm very proud of, which was an explainer of the Yemen conflict. And how do you do that in a casual style? I think we managed that just about. We broadcast from the Edinburgh Festival. We're trying to get into more cultural conversations, not just serious political ones. And I guess the biggest thing that I'm the proudest of is that other people on the BBC are now using memes in their headlines, and the whole thing has moved in a way, and we have to move with it and find ways to continue to be original. So the last thing I was going to play you is from, we'll be launching much more fast turnaround video in coming months, and this was a question of how do we take the BBC trending concept into domestic political journalism. What can you do in the right tone that works as a BBC piece of reporting for that audience? Something that we did was on the day of Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet being appointed, we looked in and Lucy Powell had been appointed and he had not met her, and that was all in a tweet. So we did quite a fun video looking at that whole concept, which I can't really translate now because I can't play it. But we are innovating, we're pushing ahead, and it's all ongoing, and we're trying to get there, basically. Questions?